Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with reporter Matt Talhelm, we're going to talk about some recent bird deaths in Fuquay-Varina. Welcome to the program, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So this is a very unusual story for you, not what you normally cover. Tell us about how you learned about this situation and, set the scene for us.
Right. I'm used to covering development and housing stories and not dead birds. We got a call to the WRAL newsroom from an environmentalist who was out in Fuquay-Varina and said, we have 50 dead vultures out here. We're picking them up. We think they're being poisoned. And of course, our initial thought was, wait, what?
Right. That's a really bizarre story.
Absolutely. And so that's how the story came to us. And we went out to try to figure out what happened.
So we didn't show the dead animals on TV, obviously, because that would be really disturbing. But tell us what you saw as a journalist when you got there.
Right. It's downright gross. And what we saw from these environmentalists that were out there, trash bags full of dead vultures. The smell was horrendous. And this is something that, they're used to doing. It's the American Wildlife Refuge out of Raleigh, and they're used to going out into the community and taking care of dead or sick animals, wildlife, as a rescue and refuge group. So they're used to seeing this, and it's just something to me was very shocking because these vultures were just piled up in a trash bag. These are ones they collected from all over this one neighborhood. Then they walked us back into another part of the neighborhood, and there were piles of dead vultures. I described them as they were belly up. They were just laying there in the woods, dead in a pile.
And this is near a water tower in Fuquay-Varina.
Yeah, so this is just off Tilley Street, just off Main Street in Fuquay-Varina, the big water tower that you see with the town logo on it. And these birds were in different places around that neighborhood, including some of them right underneath the town's water tower within the secure fence. So no one put them there, obviously. They just fell from the sky and died right there.
And the irony is that we're used to seeing vultures at the scene of other dead animals. I mean, that's what vultures tend to do.
They're scavengers, yeah.
Right. And I shared with you, I covered a story one time where there were 40, 50, I don't remember exactly how many dead cats in a mobile home. And the vultures were covering the roof of that mobile home because they smelled, obviously, the alcohol from the urine from the dead cats. And so, this was just really strange. So tell me about the concerns they've had about vultures in that town and the effigies.
Right. So around this area, around the water tower, for years, the town has had a problem with vultures. They circle around there. They sit on that water tower. They roost up there. And when you look at it, when you're standing right underneath it, it's disgusting to say, but you could see the streaks of bird waste just down the side of this tower. So the town itself, wants to protect its infrastructure, obviously. They want to protect their investment, and that can damage that tower. So what they did a couple years back, no one really knows exactly when, no one from the town can remember, but they hung up effigies, which are stuffed vultures. These are actual parts of vultures that died from natural causes, and they stuff them and hang them from the side of the water tower. What they say that does is it deters the vultures from coming.
Scares them away because they think there is competition.
There's danger, there's competition there. And so we didn't see a ton of vultures or any birds really sitting on that water tower anymore. Every now and then one would come up and just perch there for a minute, but it seems to have worked. The town says it seems to be helping protect this water tower from damage and get these vultures away. There were other vultures still, though, circling in that general area, just not landing on the water tower.
So the two possibilities that people have talked about, you've already mentioned one, could they have been poisoned because people don't like the vultures? And then the other possibility that the scientists have talked about is the avian flu. So where are people leaning right now?
Well, I reached out to the state's Wildlife Resources Commission, and they say that this is almost certainly the highly pathogenic avian influenza or the bird flu. They've actually documented deaths in that general area going back to November of 2022, and they say they continue to get reports from time to time. So they're pretty certain it's that. The group that went out and got these dead vultures, they're actually taking swabs from them to a lab that will be able to determine if it is the avian influenza, the bird flu. So we'll have to wait to find out if those results come back. But the group that's out there, these volunteers that they deal with this all the time, all across the region, they're suspicious because they've been out there one other time about a year and a half ago and found 5 dead vultures and some that were alive that they took to a vet, and it was almost like they were drunk. Like these vultures were sort of stumbling.
Like there could have possibility
like
of
they
a
were
poison.
Poisoning. And that was what these volunteers with the American Wildlife Refuge said. They believe that this is a poisoning because you have so many. Even the states.
At one time.
Yeah, the largest the state had seen was like 100 to 200 in the Piedmont part of the state. Usually it's less than 25 birds at a time that are dying from bird flu in these areas. So it seems suspicious, and it's definitely reason for this investigation to continue. Absolutely.
Well, we will be right back after the break with more from Matt Talhelm. We're going to talk about the laws regarding wildlife in North Carolina, and also if this was a poisoning, how it might impact other wildlife. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm talking with reporter Matt Talhelm about recent bird deaths in Fuquay-Varina. Now, we were talking about the possibility of these birds being poisoned. We absolutely do not know the answer to that right now. But if this were to be the case, the wildlife experts you talk to say there's no way to target only birds. If you do poison animals, there's always a chance that other wildlife, even domesticated pets, could be affected.
Right. If they eat a poisoned vulture, they become poisoned as well. So it is a danger out there to other animals and other wildlife. It was interesting. We didn't see any signs of other dead wildlife or even any other dead birds, which you would think you'd see if it was the bird flu, that there'd be other dead birds around there. We didn't see that.
Makes sense.
And the American Wildlife Refuge volunteers that collected these dead vultures said the same thing. They walked around there and collected 40 to 50 of these dead vultures. There were more that they couldn't get to. And they said they didn't see any other dead birds or dead wildlife in that general area. And it's interesting when you think about the impact to the rest of the community. These vultures, they eat the roadkill. They eat those dead animals that other animals won't eat. And that's not going to be happening if all of these vultures are killed off.
Yeah, in your reporting, I think you mentioned something like 39,000 pounds of dead animals a year in North Carolina. And obviously, a lot of those are taken care of by scavengers.
Right. And that's the estimate from the American Wildlife Refuge volunteers here in Raleigh that we talked to that were out there. They kind of just did the math and said, okay, if 50 vultures are dead, they eat this much a day. That's this many 39,000 pounds of
that's going to be left over
that
somebody has to clean
at the town or someone will have to clean up. Yeah.
And this has happened, like you mentioned, 5 have happened here. Any other instances that you know of mass kills of birds in North Carolina?
So we haven't seen any others in our area in the Triangle. There have been some bigger bird flu cases that have killed off 2,500 birds at a time. But this one just is unusual. And it is, like I mentioned, the second time in the same neighborhood in Fuquay-Varina that this has happened in a year and a half or so.
What are the laws when it comes to wildlife in North Carolina and specifically vultures in terms of whether you're not allowed to tamper with them, obviously? Right.
This is something new I learned in doing this story is that vultures are federally protected birds. You wouldn't necessarily think so.
No, that's very interesting.
A lot of people think they're a nuisance, but they have a purpose.
They're utilitarian, absolutely,
as scavengers. So it is illegal for anyone to injure, harass, kill, or possess one of these birds or a part of these birds. So the town of Fuquay-Varina is very adamant about that. They even, when they hung up those effigies, they put out a warning and even an updated warning back in 2021, just explaining what those effigies are that are hanging from the water tower. And a big note at the bottom of that post that they put onto their social media platforms was, it is illegal to kill these. They don't want people to get the impression.
They don't want to encourage people to do that. So just recap for us, where does the investigation stand right now?
So right now we are waiting for the results from those swabs that are being taken to a lab in Raleigh to figure out if this is avian influenza, which then that would solve a lot of this. We may not necessarily know if the birds themselves were poisoned. One of the things that the American Refuge Volunteers mentioned to us is that there's no labs that they can find that will take these birds to test for poisoning. They'll just test if it's bird flu and move on. So it's something that they're going to keep watching. These volunteers that go out there and rescue and take in wildlife, they're going to keep a close eye on that neighborhood and anywhere around there to see if they get any more calls. They're encouraging people. If you live in that area of Fuquay-Varina and you see more of these dead vultures,
to let them
call
know.
them.
And finally, I know you did talk to some neighbors off camera. What are people saying in the community?
One of the people we talked to said, yeah, I've seen a lot of these dead vultures, and I wondered what was going on. And they've noticed it, they've wondered, and I think they are a little bit suspicious that there may be someone poisoning these birds because just of where they're being found and in the amount of them.
It's a large number, absolutely. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your reporting on this and sharing your insight on this story. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with Triangle news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.